Gentlemen, warm welcome from Berlin, Germany. My name is Daniel Stecher, IBS Software, and on behalf of Claire Tate from Dallas and the entire Enigma community, it's great to have you all with us. And today is another focus topic presentation for our global community. And today our presenter is Marcel S from Qatar Airways, and he's going to talk about optimizing the training assignment along with the roster optimization, including optimized training resource allocation. So I think the session is planned for around about 45 to 60 minutes, and I know the presentation already from Marcel, so we can have it very lively, and I hope we can ask questions at any time, or do you want to do it at the end of the session?
No, please interrupt me at any time. Yes.
So then, stage is yours. And
Yes,
for
yes.
the audience, please raise your hand, because Marcel is not seeing that maybe you have a question. Raise your hand here within MS Teams, and you can also post your questions in the chat window, and that is then also something which we will use for steering the lively discussion. Enjoy, and Marcel, you are on stage, please.
Thank you very much. Yes, so this is a presentation. I'm hoping you can all see it. It's a presentation I did almost a month ago at a conference. So the topic is about training that we do at Qatar Airways. So what I will be going through is basically tell you how we actually still do the training at this moment at Qatar Airways, why we are changing it, what we will be changing, and what kind of stumbling blocks we expect to come across along the way. So I'm hoping to answer all these questions, and like I said earlier, by all means interrupt me anytime you want, because the presentation was created for people using the same software that we are using. So I can imagine that some of the concepts that I talk about, while I assume that people know what I'm talking about, may be a bit foreign to you in your circumstance. So yeah, by all means, tell me, like, what are you talking about right now? First, a bit about myself. My name is Marcel S. As was mentioned, I am Dutch. I am living in Qatar now since 2015. I've been in crew management since 2096, and doing that for, well, my previous airline was KLM. And as you may notice throughout this presentation, there's a lot of references in there for football, and that has to do with the fact that in literally 10 days from now, Qatar will be hosting the FIFA World Cup. There's a lot of kerfuffle going on about this, but we here in Qatar are quite proud about this and really looking forward to it. And literally everything in the airline, in the country is geared towards doing this. So we're non-stop working all of this. So we're really looking forward to it, but equally, we're very much looking forward to it being over and just relaxing, breathing, enjoying the fact that the Netherlands has won the World Championship and just go on. So busy times ahead for the coming month. Right, so let's start my story. It all started in 2017. At that time, I just joined the airline. I noticed that there's a lot of people doing training assignment by hand, and when I say a lot of people, it's about 50 people or something. They create the training programs. They allocate the classrooms. They allocate the flight simulators. They plan the instructors. They plan the trainees. They make sure that everybody gets their bits, at least the instructors, and they have to do this in a very short amount of time, because somewhere around the 8th of a month, the pairings are final. Those pairings are to be used by by the training planners to plan the line flying, the line training bit. And they have to do this before the rostering optimizer kicks in and creates the actual roster. So there is a bunch of people who are busy throughout the month, but have a short period in time in which they have to do everything, which means, when you work so hard under so much pressure, there's bound to be the odd mistake here and there. And also what it means is that once they are done and we move on to the rostering optimizer, we don't have like a nice, clean playing field to work on with the optimizer. It's something that has a lot of rocks on it. And those are all the pre-assigned training, the pre-assigned off days related to the training. And the rostering optimizer has to build around this, which means that it may hinder the bits of a crew. It could be that somebody was assigned on a recurrent training on the 20th of a month, while that person would really want to go to New York or have a day off on that day. And had the planner known that, they could easily have planned that training on the 12th of the month or whatever. So those rocks hinder the success rates for the crew, and it hinders the rostering optimizer from creating the most optimal solution. There's also, when you create all those manual assignments, you like to scatter these rocks in a nice, efficient, evenly distributed manner. So for doing that, they came up with all kinds of rules that are not really triggered by EASA or I would say the unions, but as you know, Qatar Airways doesn't really have a union. But those are rules that are there just to make sure that whatever you build manually is potentially rosterizable afterwards by the optimizer. But it's artificial. It's not a real a rule that we need as an airline. So yeah, it's not ideal. So therefore, we thought, okay, it's time to start picking some low-hanging fruits. And the lowest hanging fruit that I could find at that moment was a training that was called LMS, which is actually not even a training. It's a day off given as a reward for crew who do online trainings in their own time. So they're supposed to do an X number of trainings, and as compensation, they give 1 day extra off in a year. But the training planners distribute those days equally throughout the year. And again, doing this without knowing what the roster looks like. So, and also not knowing what the crew are going to bid for. So hardly optimal. Now, what we did is we told them, stop doing this manually. We will do that day in the rostering optimizer. So, and actually we didn't even do it in the optimizer. We let the optimizer just create optimal rosters. And then there's always a number of people who have more than the minimum required days off, because there is either some rule preventing it or whatever kind of thing. So there's always a few days that you can just give freely, which is what we did. And it turned out that without doing anything to the optimizer, we could give all those LMS days that we were supposed to give, and that were normally placed over the entire year, in the first 3 months of the year. So that was very easy. We didn't actually have to do anything, but we took away some work for the planning, the training planning people, and we looked really smart, and that was cool. So the first rock was removed. There he goes. Now, then it was time for some real training. So we picked one that is called, I went a bit too far. No, I skipped apparently a minute. So the next training we did was another training, and that is called SCPR, which is a training that is, it's a classroom training for cabin crew. the system still assigns and allocates a number of classrooms, assigns an instructor on it, and the optimizer in that case just looks at who is eligible for this training. So who will expire this week, this month, if we don't give it the training, or who can have it either next month or even the month before after that. So in other words, the optimizer uses the expiry date to assign these trainings. And we did a couple of those trainings, removed some of the rocks because of that. But every time we build a training like that, it was a specific code written for that training. So it was nice. It helped us taking away some of those rocks, yet it was a lot of work. Work not so much for the training planners, not so much for the rosters, but for my team, the nerds. And I didn't want to go on like this. So then we went for a more generic solution in which we retrieve the trainings from our tracking tool. So there we know what type of training are planned to happen the next month. We create pairings out of those trainings that are assignable objects for the optimizer. We got a table that defines all the trainings that we want to be solving in the optimizer. Still, these are all either recurrent trainings or one-off single training blocks, training assignments. We give them, so we define how do we recognize who needs to get this training. So that's either an expiry code or it's a crew group. We define how bad is it if a person doesn't have the training, because some of the trainings are mandatory, some of the trainings are optional. And we send all of this to the optimizer, and that assigns those trainings in an optimal way. Now, by doing this and making it generic like this, we gave the rostering teams the option of defining themselves which training they wanted to have in the optimizer. So of course you don't start with all the recurrent training, but you slowly but surely every month pick up 1 or 2 or 3 extra trainings into this system. Now by doing that, we removed quite a bit of the rocks, got really enthusiastic. We even started using this mechanism for assigning stuff that's actually not even a training, like for instance, assigning the vaccination for the crew for the COVID. We planned the interviews for the US Embassy because, yes, it's not a training, but it's still driven by an expiry date, and being the expiry date of the visa. Sometimes we get like a new business class seat and people need to train how to put that thing up and down and how to get mobile phones out of it when they fall in it. Those type of trainings we can also plan. And all these things, adding those kind of trainings to the system is purely done by the rostering team. So I'm just sitting back, relaxing, seeing them building this. Now, after a while, we moved onwards and we also added recurrent flight trainings to this. So that would be annual line checks for pilots. It would be the promotion training for cabin crew. So if you have an F2 who becomes an F1, which means cabin crew, how do you call that usually? Economy class cabin attendant going to business class. Those kind of trainings, they need to do a number of observation flights. Doesn't really matter what the flight is. It means you need some generic principles about the flights, but you don't need an instructor on board. They just fly above strength as the extra one. Well, all of this, we built a similar solution as for the recurrent ground training for the flights, and the rostering teams can start doing this.
Marcel, there's a question from Paul. Paul, do you want to ask the question verbally?
Sorry to interrupt there, Marcel.
No, please do.
Are crew permitted to bid for their training days, or is it just pure assignment?
No, we don't have bids for trainings. So we have a bidding tool. They can bid for time off. They can bid for activity bids, and an activity bid is a attribute of what can be a flight. So it could either be the destination, flight number, duration, briefing time. We do not have a training bid, but by placing the time off bids, they can at least avoid certain days in which they prefer not to have the training. So it's not specifically the training.
Okay, thank you for that.
You're welcome. Right. So at that, where were we now? We were at the stage where basically all the recurrent training, all the one-off trainings, and then some were done by the optimizer. And so this group of 50 people doing everything by hand, well, they didn't actually get less, but their work changed a bit. So I got enthusiastic to sit down and looked like, okay, what is there to be done still? So we had line training was still done manually. The instructors were all assigned by hand. The bidding of the instructors didn't go through our bidding system because they had their own, more or less Excel-based thing. Sorry about this. And all the allocation of the training resources, so the simulators in the classroom was still done by hand. So there was still a lot of work to be done. So I decided.
And you said 50 people are doing this.
Oh yeah, I'm not really completely sure if it's 50 or not 40, but it's a massive room full of people who do this. We have a group of people do it for cabin crew, and another group doing it for flight deck, and then we have yet a third group, and they are in the IOC, in the OCC, as most people call it, doing the crew control for the training sector. So, but yes, because it's so much manual work, there's a lot of people involved in this. Yep. So I chose line training. I thought, okay, let's continue on this flow. Let's do line training. How hard can that be? Well, it turns out it's actually pretty hard. We banged our head against the wall quite quickly, actually. Found out, okay, yeah, ambitious as it is, it's also not very realistic. And so what makes it so difficult? Well, first of all those 50 people, they have rules in their head. And quite a few of those rules, the majority of those rules, I must say, are in the tracking tool. The tracking tool is the system, the tool that they use to maintain these bits and to create those bits. But not all of them are in that tracking tool. There's also quite a few rules that they apply because they know it's always done like this, and not as consistently. There are some people who do this rule, some other people who do the same rule but slightly different. So there's a lot of interpretation difference as well. So if you want to do this in an optimizer, you cannot have this vagueness. You must have the exact definition of those rules. You must know which rule do you actually still need. Like what I said in the beginning, there's quite a bit of the rules that are there just to make sure that those rocks are evened out nicely. But you don't need to even them out nicely if everything is done in one optimizer. So which rule is there because there is a educational or training need for that rule, and which rule is there just to make life a bit easier? That's quite a tricky thing. Now, one other thing is that the instructors that do the line training, quite a few of them also do instruction on ground training. So you cannot just say, you know what, we plan then the ground training by hand still, and the rest of the time we let the optimizer decide which line training they do, because yeah, you cannot build half a roster for those people. You need to know which half can I build and how much not. So in other words, if you want to do this, then you must, in the same optimization run, also include the ground activities for those instructors. And then there is another thing, but while we create the rosters for flight deck, so far we have the regular line pilots are qualified for one fleet. So when you're a 777 pilot, you only fly 777, which makes that in our optimization runs for 777, we only include the 777 pilots and only have the 777 flights. But a 777 instructor can be qualified on the 787 or on 747. So in other words, we cannot just do those optimization runs for fleet by fleet. We have to combine them, which explodes the problem. So luckily we do not have anybody who is both Airbus and Boeing, so we could still separate all the Boeing fleets and in a separate street do all the Airbus fleet. But yeah, we have to combine this. So if we want to do this, we need all instructors for one aircraft manufacturer. We need to assign the ground activities, and we need to assign the flight activities all in one thing. And yeah, that is quite complex. And one of the things that make it complex is that for a line training program, which can typically stretch over many weeks, there are all kinds of relations, like the annual line check, the final line check, so the last leg of the line training program, quite often may not be done by anybody who has been involved in any of the previous line checks. So, and there is, for a specific session in the line training, you need a certain qualification of the instructor. It must be, this one must be by a TRE, the other one may be a TRE or a TRI, and so on and so on. So there's all kinds of qualification issues that are there on those trainings now. And for a constraint, in the software we use from Jefferson, there's basically two ways of controlling what is legal roster. There's one it's called a rule that looks horizontally. It takes one person, and if you want to know, you may fly X number of hours in rolling 28 days. You look only at that roster of that person. You count in the 28 days, yes, I am within the limit. The next 28 days, yes, I'm in the limit, and so on. So you look at one row only. If you want to look at multiple people that are on the same flight, then you can do that as well. That's not a rule, that's called a constraint. And then you can see who else is on the same leg. But in that case, you see only that leg. So if you take this example here, you see the top line, what you see here is a trainee who has 4 flights in his roster, those green thingies. All of them are line training, and below it are 4 different instructors, each giving instruction on one of the line training flights. Now, there's in the table below, you see a number of conditions where those sectors must comply to, and you see also that these are defined on sector based. So we define them in sector 15 and 16. You must have at least 30-hour flight and maximum, well, whatever. So it's basically you count the sectors in the line training program, and that defines what it is. Now, this is a very small set. There is a lot more information that is defined in those things, like qualification of the instructors, which rules are to be applied and which not. What is the maximum flying hours, and so on and so on and so on. But you and I, when we look at this plot, you can see that the first trip is sector 1 and 2. The second trip is sector 3 and 4. And our graphical user interface sees exactly the same. It can also count which sector it is and thereby know if the combination of the trainer and the trainee is a legal one. But for the optimizer, in those constraints that I just talked about, we don't see everything. We only see this. We only see a flight and 2 people on it. So actually we don't see both legs, we see only one leg in here. So in this case, I have no way of knowing if this is sector 15, 56, 16 or sector 1. So I don't know what kind of restrictions there are. And this was the major wall that I hit my face against, because it's not that I'm not clever enough or that software is not clever enough. It just simply is a restriction in the optimizer. We can't get beyond this. So we had to do something different. And that different thing was a project called OTRA, which is an abbreviation for Optimized Training Assignment. And the idea of this was to do exactly what I said earlier, complete optimization containing all the trainings. So recurrent training, line training, initial trainings, one-off trainings, both trainees and the instructors, both flight deck and cabin crew, and also optimize the allocation of the simulators and the training in the classrooms. This is a pretty ambitious plan, one that Jefferson told me was not possible to do, which is not really helpful because we're using their software to build it. But we did it anyway, and the way we did it by splitting this entire problem up into 4 different project problems. One of them, the training resource allocation, I postponed. We will pick that up next year. So for the time being, our training planners will continue to manually assign classrooms and simulators. But the other 3 we have built now, which means that we first start an optimization that assigns all the line training for the trainees. Now, having that information, we can store that information. So then we know for all the legs who is on those legs as a trainee and where they are in the training phase. So by doing that problem that I mentioned earlier, that I don't see if person A is flying with instructor B, where they are, that's gone, because now I know where they are. I know which session this is working on. So then in the second run, I can optimize all the instructors to match those line training flights that have been assigned in the first run, and to also be assigned on the recurrent trainings that require an instructor, but also to assign them on regular flights where they can act as a recurrent flight instructor. So for the annual line checks. So that's in the third run. And then once that is done, then in essence, all the training has been assigned. Then we go for the all opt, which is the full optimization where we do the result that we had before is logged, and then we assign all the other activities, so the regular line flying to everybody. Now we do this in 3 different flows. We do it separately for cabin crew, all Boeing pilots and all Airbus pilots. And one thing is we do it completely automated. So it's not just an optimization, but all of these steps are automated. So there is not a human involved in doing this. It's scripted. It gets the information from the tracking system, from the bidding system, does this, and after a month it puts it back into the in the tracking tool. Well, it doesn't mean that there are no humans involved. I did not fire all those 50 people yet. Sorry. But those people, their jobs will definitely change. Instead of being the operators doing all the manual labor, they would now monitor this process. They would see how is this machinery going, where is it going to, is it working what it's supposed to be doing, and do we reach optimality in the way that we want to do it, or do we need to steer it? So they would change from operators to analysts. Well, here is in a very short summary the steps that it go to. I'll try to make it a bit more quick.
I say there's a question from Maxime in the meantime. Maxime, do you want to ask a question?
Okay.
Yeah, fire away.
Maxime, you're muted.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Thank you, Marcel. I suppose it works well if you have instructors more than enough. So because what are you doing if it's lack of instructors and you could not switch from step 2 to step 3?
It's as if we had well rehearsed this question. Thank you for it, because you can get this question exactly on time. That is this flow that you're seeing now is going to take care of, because no, we do not have instructors enough. Instructors are very expensive, well, just like pilots in general, but they are slightly more because they are the more senior ones. So the way we do it is like this. I'm going to step over this one here because this is going to be phase 2. Now, as I said, we have these 4 steps. Step 2 was the line training one. The way it started is you've got all the data coming in from the tracking tool, knowing who needs to be trained. You have your results where you were the day before when this process was also running. And you look at that result where you were yesterday and what you want to do today. If it all matches, you don't need to do anything. You can go on into the instructor phase. But if there are people who you planned yesterday and now are sick, or if new trainings came in, you start the training optimizer. Now, the line training optimizer is quite simple. You have a need for line training and you try to fulfill it. If it's like it's defined by sectors, you try to squeeze it in as short a time as possible to have those people fully trained as quickly as possible, but it can shift backwards. So you just basically try to do it as much as you can in the playing phase. Now, once that is done, you store the result of this and you move on to the instructor phase. There you go, exactly the same thing. You read the result of where you were yesterday. You read the result of this line training run that you just completed and see, well, am I completely done? If so, happy, don't do anything, move on to the next step. If not, you start the optimizer. Now, out of that optimizer, there are 3 possible conclusions. Either everything is done, all the ground training have an instructor, all the line training has an instructor, and there are enough line trainers of instructors assigned to regular line flying to perform all the required recurrent line checks. If that is the case, happy, we go on with the next phase. But especially in the beginning, it's very likely not the case. There's probably a few sessions that do not have an instructor. So in that case, there are 2 situations. Either it's a ground activity that doesn't have an instructor. And then we have a problem because, as I said, the ground training is done by hand. We still manually allocate who gets to be assigned. No, not who, but where we assign the recurrent flight safety trainings, where we assign the whatever kind of trainings. So if we cannot find instructors for that, that means that we have allocated those things too densely, or we allocated them on days where there's no availability. So in that case, we go back to step one, the training allocation step. And we get information out of this, where the problem is, what the availability is of various instructors. And with that, they reallocate the training simulators and then step back into step two, the line training allocation, again, coming back to the instructor. So this is a loop that may be gone through 1 to 500 times. I don't see how often it is done, but in essence, that's the reason why I have this automation here. You keep doing this up until the moment when it all fits now. So if once you have the ground training all covered, then, but you're still not complete because there are some line trainings that don't have it, then the mechanism realizes which line trainings are okay and where the problem is. And that means that those line trainings were too ambitious, too densely placed. So you go back to the line training optimizer and tell, listen, these and these and these and these people must start from this day onwards on a later day. You run that and you go back to the optimizer for the instructors to see if now it does fit. And if not, then it goes back and then back and then back. So this mechanism will loop through either the training optimizer, the training allocator, line training in optimizer, instructor optimizer, the next number of times up until the moment when it all fits. So the way to make it fit is basically shift trainings into the next month. And
Paul has another question, Marcel. Paul?
Tell me.
Yeah, sorry. Just listening to how you're doing this. So flight duty pairings are created. The training or the line training then selects pairing or flight duty periods, allocates it. The rest of the FDPs then go to the general population for assignment.
Yes.
So does that mean that your flight schedule is released earlier than it could have been due to this sequence of events?
No, because at this moment, today, we finalized the pairings around the 10th of the month to do this, the manual assignment of this all. For now, we're going to continue doing it, keeping it on the 10th of the month, but instead of doing it manually, we will do this optimizer stuff. And we, as I said, this is still very much in development. My estimation is that it will roughly work in the same amount of time, but it will be optimal. And so we don't expect that it's going to be much shorter or faster, but if it is faster, which potentially could be the case, then it could be that we can bring it later, but we would still bring the entire shebang of trainings in it. And once we're done with all the steps and we've completed the instructor run, then we go to the final step where we do everything else. Now, in the original phase one, the training, the trips that will be assigned in this optimizer will be the remainder. So it will be those trips that are not used by the line training. Now,
Marcel, there's another question.
Tell me.
It's from Edina.
Yes, hi. Just a quick one. You said on the 10th of the month you are releasing the pairings. When are you releasing the rosters?
The seventh day before the end of the month. So either the 23rd or the 24th.
So this procedure roughly takes 2 weeks, right?
We have 2 weeks for it, and I'm expecting it to be shorter.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Yeah. So one of the things for phase 2 or perhaps even phase 3 would be to not block those trips that are used for line training, but to say, okay, this person is on the line training and he's on a let's say a layover in Amsterdam, but we have a layover to Frankfurt, which is roughly the same departure time. It's the same aircraft type. It's more or less the characteristics of is the same. So if there's a line pilot who requests this Amsterdam flight, and yeah, frankly, who wouldn't, then it's we could say in this optimizer, okay, well, you know what, we're going to swap the Amsterdam flight from this line training into a regular line pilot and giving the Frankfurt instead. That is not something that we're going to do now, but it's on our radar to make it make flights more available for the bidding process. So yeah, this is more or less what we're going to do. So here you see the same plot again in one step. Yeah, and then the question about why do I do everything automated? Well, it's quite simple. You saw there was a lot of repeating steps. You flow through this thing many times, possibly. And if you do these repeating steps, well, first of all, it's very boring, but it's also likely that you forget a step here and there. And yeah, people don't work 24/7. Well, my scripts, they do. So now there's a big downside to all of this. If you create a black box where you put people in, bids in, trainings in, and you get rosters out of it, then you have no control, and that is definitely not a good thing. So we've built all kinds of tools to see where are we in this flow? How is it going? Are we converging towards an equilibrium, or is it just are we not getting anywhere? We find a way of giving our analysts option of starting their own optimization runs using different settings, for instance, saying like if they don't like where it's going to, they can start playing around with it themselves. And if they like their results better, they can hook that into this machinery so that the machine will take their results for the remainder of the process. So,
Marcel, but I'm very surprised that I see an apple here, not an avocado.
Yes. See, and this was so originally when I did this presentation, I did it with a video wall of 10 meters by 3 behind me. So that was not just a field with rocks, but I had an apple tree where I was picking the low-hanging fruit. And yes, on one of the slides I said I should have used avocados instead of apples. So see this as a special brand of avocados, but very well spotted. So where are we now? Well, phase 1 is more or less done. It's well, there's the old thing that we need to build here and there, a few rules, but it's more or less working now. As I said earlier, everything is now geared towards football, towards the World Cup. So in November, December, we will do nothing. Well, we will do a lot, but we will not take this live. But starting from next year, we will bring it live, but we will not bring it live as in, okay, guys, here's your new tool, have fun with it. because it is a complete paradigm shift. It's a complete different way of working for both the rostering team and the training planning team. It's very likely that those teams will have to merge together. So the focus on this will be to educate people, to tell them what we're doing. So I had exactly the same presentation last week for them, and we will have to reorganize. We have to see who can work with this new situation, who needs to be retrained, who needs to, how are we going to work with it? So it's more, the first half of next year will be about reorganization, organizational optimization, as you may call it. But I would guess that somewhere in the second quarter, this will be working now. And in the meantime, we will be developing the second phase, so that will be the training resource allocator. Now, the tool that we're using, Jefferson, doesn't have a training resource allocator. It's a rostering optimizer, which is a completely different optimization thing. So we're building something ourselves. We expect to be ready with that somewhere quarter 3, quarter 4 next year, and bring that live as well.
Marcel, have you also considered to scan the market and check whether there are technology suppliers who have the combination of both? Or is there a specific trigger behind that you decided to go for an in-house development?
Well, you mean for the resource allocation? Yes, it is. We're still doing that, actually. Like Jefferson, for instance, is developing something, but is very much in primordial stage. I have been looking around to see what it is, and yes, I'm open for anything, because if you may remember last June when we did the AgriForce crew management meeting, I asked that question, do people have, it was actually last year even, I asked that question, do other vendors have tools available for this? Because I don't need to build it myself. It's, if there is something that does it, that's perfectly fine. It could be, it doesn't have to be in the same optimizer, it just needs to be able to communicate with us. So yes, if anybody on this call says something, oh, I have something ready for you, by all means, contact.
First Antonius and then Jenny.
Great. Marcel, you said you implemented all this for phase 1. So I then got it. In which tool did you do it? In an in-house tool?
Oh, all of this is, so we use Jefferson for our rostering tool.
Yeah.
Jefferson comes with a configuration layer that you can monitor yourself. So they have a language called Rave, which allows you to define the rules, the objective functions for the optimizer, the constraints. And then there is a Python as a language to do the automation part. So we could build this without going to the vendor of the tool, and we could just do it in-house. We have our team of, so my team is me, one manager below me who manages the rest of the team, and 6 developers. And we build this in-house using their products.
So the Jefferson rostering was the basis, and you did all the work in-house with making the scripts in Python, Rave, or any other combination, in order to fit the optimizer of Jefferson.
Yes, that's true.
Okay, great.
So far, except for the resource allocator, everything else is using just their product. Yeah.
Jenny.
Thank you.
Hi, Marcel. Thank you
Hello.
for the presentation. Nice to see you. My question was regarding the crew bit for instructors. What are you planning to do with that? Because as it says here, you need this information to bid the crew bid when you open the window, but the instructor's roster would be pretty tight and optimized. So
yes,
they might get very few bids,
well,
or what are you planning to do?
No, what we so far we've today, like I said earlier, the instructors, the bidding is using a completely separate tool, as an Excel-based thing, is a horrendous thing, but it works for them, as in they can request one flight and they can request some days off here and there. So for the time being, we're going to let that one sit. So the bidding experience for crew, for instructors, will be the same. Now, once all of this is done, all the optimizer steps in it will use the bidding data that we have. So if the instructors place their bids in CrewBid, we would, while doing these instructor runs and the line training runs and all those runs, do it with as much as possible those bids in mind. Now, and on top of that, also at the beginning next year, we're going to introduce a request tool, which is, we're not going to use the Jefferson crew request tool because, yeah, didn't really like it. But we have a way of granting activity bids, so bids for flights using a strict seniority method, and that will run before everything else. So yeah, we will, once all of this is running, we will include the bidding element in it, because yes, the bidding is the lifeline a crew has to his social life versus the work life. So it's very important. But yeah, we start off by just maintaining that horrendous thing that we have at this moment.
Great, thank you.
Are there further questions from the audience?
Must be. No?
You have one. Do you have more than one crew base?
No, we're very fortunate on that sense. We have one base. We don't have unions, and yeah. And we don't have weather. That's also something that like some airlines would really find envious. Yes.
Yeah, so
Claire,
it's
you raised your hand.
like living in heaven.
Well, if you step outside here in the summer, you may think it's hell. No, but yes, it is in very many ways. It is. So it makes it easy in this case, because yes, if we were multi-based, then you open another can of worms into this equation. We do have in this respect, for training, there is something that is a bit base-ish. And that is the fact that we have a lot of simulators, but not always enough. So we quite often send people to Frankfurt or Singapore or all over the world to do those training sessions there, which makes it a bit more complex in the sense that when you plan a recurrent flight safety training for a pilot in Frankfurt, you need to not just assign him to those two simulators, but you also need to plan the deadhead towards it and the deadhead back. And you need to make sure that if you have the instructors, you don't just plan one session and then 2 days nothing and then another session, because you prefer to keep it like in a row so that you can have an instructor who goes to Frankfurt, does 3 of those things in a row, and then flies back. So that's a bit as close as we get to having multi-bases.
Okay, thanks, Marcel.
You're
Claire,
welcome.
you raised your hand.
So I can certainly relate, and I'm sure many on this call can, to some of the challenges you had with getting rules from people's heads into an optimizer, and then sort of the loss of control and the challenges of optimizing a process. So this is really exciting to see what you're working on and about to put into production. One question I have for all of us on the call for you is, what is one piece of advice you would pass on to any of us who are about to embark on such an optimization and automation challenge, not specifically for training, but for automating any process such as this?
That's a good one. Well, you must be well motivated. You must love optimization. I am passionate about crew management, about optimization, and because you're going to be confronted with an endless amount of people who tell you it cannot be done, and so the most important thing is just ignore all those people that say it cannot be done. If in the end it turns out that it cannot be done, well, then you cross that bridge when you get to it. But if you keep saying it cannot be done, then nothing will be done. And so you need the motivation and the passion. And you need to sort of also bully a bit, as in when I speak to those training planners and they describe their rules, they say, yeah, this rule is really important. And I can understand why it's important to them, because it's for them, they've been doing that for 30 years, using that rule. But if you look at the greater picture, the total optimization, it's actually a hindrance rather than helpful. So I just tell them, no, I'm not going to build that rule. And then they don't like me. Yeah, so it is, you need to be looking at it very much from an optimization standpoint. You have to be very much focused on what is needed to reach the optimum, without, of course, losing sight of what actually is important. Like, for instance, the lifestyle of the crew. You cannot just say, you know what, I'm just not going to do bidding, because that steps away from optimality. But yeah, having all your crew totally disgruntled and leaving, that steps away from optimality as well. So yeah, that's more or less what I would say. And try to cut it up in smaller pieces as much as possible. Yeah.
Any further question from the audience? Then I want to share some information about the current status of the Enigma. So we are at the moment 270 members from 112 airlines. You can all see the mission statement and also the rules of the community. So we really want to share best practice. This is the main reason to be in this community. We want to foster networking. So you have here really a wealth of experience from all over the world. Any kind of business model is really available in this group, and I think it gives us also the opportunity to try to establish maybe new standards in the future while talking with each other. The way we want to engage is exactly via these focus topic presentations, but we also offer general networking sessions, and we have the next one on 15th November, which is like a social hour, where we especially want to talk about the recovery, because many of you have put recovery, disruption recovery, as the major topic to be addressed in this community. And we want to hear exactly from you, what was your personal experience, how you tried to mitigate a major disruption for your airline, how many pizza have you eaten. You saw probably also the post from Claire in our community. And then we will have also upcoming focus topic presentations. So the next one is 7 December. So you will be able, after the session, to make the booking for the session with Rich Almasi. Then we have a session on Project Genesis. You saw the post that a group of experts is currently working on a manual for crew planning, and that's also an opportunity for you to be part of this community, specifically working on this Project Genesis. So if you want to be part of this project, please get in touch with us. But we are going to present the intermediate state of this manual on 17 January. And then we have another focus topic presentation on Valentine's Day. Leonie wants to talk about from a buyer to a seller market, the hotel perspective and challenge to work with airline crews. It's quite interesting because she has the background from the hotel business, and they are treating guests and passengers are also treating guests, and some of the guests are coming from airlines. So that will be an interesting presentation too. And if you want to present a focus topic, please ping me and Claire, because we want to learn from you how you are operating, how you are coping with the challenges, what you have in mind to change, because that's exactly the wisdom we want to share amongst the community. Yeah, and so please join us for the upcoming sessions. Also, Project Genesis, I think, is a great opportunity to network with other colleagues here from the industry. And yeah, we will have fantastic sessions about all these various topics where we just touched today on crew training, optimization, and there is the sky's the limit, I would say. We are collecting steadily from you all the various topics you want to address. Please get in touch with Claire and me if you have the desire to be also on stage like today. And I think, Marcel, fantastic session. And I look very much forward also to the World Cup. I will now think about Germany, how the Germans are playing in the World Cup. And I will also think about the training management team, because I just learned you are doing nothing in November and December and everybody is watching the World Cup. No, I think it was a fantastic presentation. We are going to share the recording, so you can also share this with non-community members, but please invite them to join the community. But we have 4 basic conditions to be part of this community. You need to be smart, positive, upbeat and enthusiastic. And if all these 4 criteria are met, you are highly welcome to join the Enigma community. So thank you very much again to everybody, and wish you a nice evening or rest of the day. And very important, please stay healthy and safe, and looking forward to having you soon again. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.